I have a couple of comments. Thank you so much. I mean, it's really exciting work that you're taking on, and we really appreciate all your hard work. You can really see it here. And I guess I want to speak just from sort of the environmental perspective, and I think there's so much potential in there as well. And just to give you, I know you're looking for some feedback on the definition, and I think you're pretty right on. And I might add a couple of words, on the environmental programs and policies piece in particular, that I also think there's an opportunity not just to preserve and expand what we have, but to identify new projects, new model programs that we can, then use to see if they work, like the living machine, for example, and how that affects really the community, whether it's a job creation piece, whether, what the environmental impacts are. So, identify and evaluate and then promote if need be. So some other, adjectives, I guess they are. Adverbs? Adjectives, to move that forward. Also on the environmental side, too, the land use, I know we've been sort of talking a lot about that, and I would love there to be in the, use of land in a way that maximizes community benefits, but also that preserves the natural environment whenever possible, and how to really continue to work and identify what that interface is. Whether it's a program where communities are coming in and creating gardens there, or, if there's a mixed-use project, what that looks like, but with an environmental slant as well, because maybe it's a solarizing of a building that's being put into an available land space, and then there's a garden piece connected to it. So just, on the land use piece, to have that environmental component woven in as much as possible.
If I could just comment on that, what I went over very quickly, because I know we're short on time, is we found amazing examples in the sustainable, in the SAGE project, in the community gardens. We think Catherine Sneed's doing an incredible job. Sabella Cross. There was so much going on. One of the metrics we thought could be just the tons of healthy food that is created that's giving jobs to formerly incarcerated individuals and youth through these projects while making great use of the land that's available.
Absolutely, and not to, slip into my day job lingo, but, also this piece around education, and if there's a way to sort of integrate, the growing of food into education, not just for kids, but, for grown-ups, and the cultural connection is so important, whether it's the Asian community or, African-American community, and going back to the roots of what the foods are that are important to those communities and cultures, so that I think there's a very rich educational component that ties in with the environmental component and the community benefits piece.
And that's one of the reasons why we included health as a component,
right.
Because we saw the nexus between healthy foods and quality of life. And so and water. I mean, it all comes from water.
Yeah, so this whole integrative approach, I think, is really rich and really exciting. And that's pretty much all I have, and thank you so much. The criteria and guidelines piece that you mentioned around land use, we've been sort of talking around that a little bit too, and we don't quite know how to get there, but it'd be great, I think, to be able to keep that conversation moving along as part of this conversation as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and your input. We appreciate it.
Okay. Commissioner Moran. Thank you for all of this. And it's striking, a lot of your recommendations, yes, most of them appear to be generally applicable to varying communities. That it's not community specific. Although individual programs clearly would be. I'm curious in your outreach how you saw difference in expression of interest and the issues raised throughout our service area. Because it looks like you interviewed outside San Francisco, and as you looked into the peninsula, and I don't know how far up country you went, but what kind of issues did you see outside of San Francisco that were perhaps different than what you heard inside?
Well, outside of San Francisco, as you know, it's more land use issues because most of those folks don't actually have access to the water. So they're more interested in land use issues. But what we found overall is in communities where they're more organized, they were much further along in requesting and asking for certain kind of community benefits. And in those communities that were disorganized or haven't come together as a community group, want those community benefits, but they don't know how to begin the process. So those were really the two very different requests that we found, and we really went into asking the communities to tell us what they think community benefits is, and without us dictating to them, because we really wanted to hear how they saw it and how did they frame what would be considered a community benefit. And a lot of it outside of the region was land use. Within San Francisco, it's obviously about workforce and quality of life, health, also use of land. But those were the main things I think that we saw that people were most interested in education and sustainability.
I think I'd just add that throughout your service territory, there was a keen desire to partner with the SFPUC. And that may mean different things to different people, but they wanted to be at the table, they wanted to get information, they wanted to have input. And so while the issues and concerns may vary, that desire to really work in partnership with the PUC was evident throughout your service territory.
So again, thanks for the work. Bernita and Darylyn have kind of kept me briefed throughout their research, and I think one of the things I would just share that they had told me that they were hearing as they were doing their interviews and stakeholder meetings was that there was this desire even for us to have the commission meetings rotate into different parts of the region, and so that there was a desire for some face time with the commission, and so I think that's just interesting as we think about the engagement piece. So I had a couple of comments and questions. One was around facilities and how the PUC thinks about, beyond the land use piece, the actual facilities that we own. And so whether it's around the Southeast Community Center or at that architects event that we went to, they were talking about the recycled water project, which I don't know enough about. But and as we talk about rebuilding the wastewater facility in Bayview, that we've talked about people being able to have tours and that type of thing, but how we think about the facility assets that the PUC has. We talked quite a bit about the Arts Commission, and I have never realized, Commissioner Kane, when you bring up the arts issues at previous commission meetings about kind of why we're purchasing certain pieces of art and what the connection or nexus is to the SFPUC's priorities. I didn't realize that we were actually supporting the Arts Commission financially until I sat down with Bernita and Darylyn. So that, I think, is a huge asset as we think about resources that could really support the PUC's vision and values, whether it's around supporting local artists and that type of thing. Because at this point, the PUC does not have a policy, so when you ask questions, now I get it, why you were asking questions about what the connections were, because there's probably some work that we could do to make those connections a little bit stronger. And then I did have one question about the connection to 218. And are there limitations in other places where you did the scan? Do they have those same 218 limitations?
Yes, they did. In Chicago specifically, New York does as well. There are some limitations, but when you read the definition, there are clear ways to make a nexus to the mission of the agency. And some commissions, boards have been more aggressive in that way, and others haven't.
Great.
I can say a lot more, but yes, they are facing the similar restrictions.
Okay. Colleagues, any further questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for, wow, a big report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any public comments?